Hey, welcome to The Explainer. Today we're going to tackle a really chilling question, something you've probably wondered about yourself. Why do good people sometimes do nothing in a crisis?
Just think about that phrase for a second. I didn't want to get involved. So simple, right? But it's also incredibly haunting. And that one quote, well, it launched a whole revolution in psychology, all because of one tragic night in New York City.
So look at this timeline. We're talking about 30 minutes, a full half hour. Catherine Kitty Genovese was attacked, and a lot of people heard her screams for help. But help, it just came way, way too late.
Right. So this case became absolutely infamous. And, it wasn't just because of the terrible crime itself. It was because of the story that came out afterward. The story of all those witnesses who, for whatever reason, just did nothing.
All right, so here's our game plan for today. We're going to start with the story of those 38 witnesses. Then we'll break down what psychologists call the bystander effect, figure out why we freeze in these situations, look at the hurdles to helping, and then, this is the most important part, we'll talk about how you can become an upstander.
So two psychologists, Bibb Latané and John Darley, they were just fascinated by the Genovese case. They thought, there has to be more to this. It couldn't just be that people were suddenly experiencing moral decay or becoming bad people overnight. They wanted a real explanation. And what they discovered is this totally wild, counterintuitive idea. It's called the bystander effect. And it basically says this: the more people who are there to witness an emergency, the less likely it is that any single one of them will actually step in and help. Crazy, right? Yeah, think about that for a second. We usually think safety in numbers, right? But this shows that having more people around doesn't actually guarantee your safety. In some cases, it can actively work against you.
So they put this to the test. In one of their classic experiments, they had people listen in on what they thought was a real emergency. When the participant thought they were the only person listening, a full 70% of them rushed to help.
Okay, but get this. When they ran the same experiment, but the participant believed there were other people listening in who weren't doing anything, that number plummeted. It dropped all the way down to just 40%. So what is going on here? Why does this happen?
And it's really important to get this. It's not because people are suddenly mean or uncaring. It's because our brains, well, they run smack into three really powerful psychological roadblocks.
Okay, so the first barrier is something called diffusion of responsibility. It's this idea that when you're in a crowd, you kind of mentally slice up the responsibility pie. The more people there are, the smaller your slice feels. You just think, oh, someone else will handle it, or surely someone's already called 911. The responsibility feels spread out, and so no one person feels like it's theirs.
All right, barrier number 2 is called pluralistic ignorance. This one's fascinating. We are social creatures, right? So in an uncertain situation, what do? We look around to see how everyone else is reacting. The problem is, everyone else is doing the exact same thing. So if nobody is panicking, we all just sort of collectively decide, I guess it's not an emergency, even when our gut might be screaming that it is.
And this classic smoke-filled room experiment shows this perfectly. When someone was alone in a room that started filling with smoke, 75% of them got up and reported it. Makes sense. But when you put them in a room with 2 other people who were secretly actors told to just ignore the smoke, the number of people who reported it dropped to a shocking 10%. 10. They literally trusted the calm reaction of the group more than their own eyes and nose.
And the final barrier? It's something we've all felt. Evaluation apprehension. It's just a fancy way of saying we're afraid of looking stupid. We worry, what if it's not a real emergency? I'll look like a fool. Or what if I make things worse? That fear of being judged by the crowd can be absolutely paralyzing.
So you take these 3 big barriers, and what they do is create a series of 5 mental hurdles. Think of it like an obstacle course, and every potential helper has to clear every single one of these hurdles before they actually take action.
And here's the thing. The impulse to help can get shut down at any one of these 5 stages. First, you have to even notice the event. Are you just buried in your phone? Then you have to interpret it as an emergency. Then you have to actually assume responsibility. Then you have to know how to help. And finally, you have to make the decision to act. If you fail at any single one of these steps, the person in trouble gets no help.
Okay, so that all sounds pretty bleak, right? But here's the good news. This is where we turn it all around. Because understanding why people fail to act, well, that gives us the exact roadmap we need to become what's called an upstander, someone who chooses to act.
So, what's the plan? Here are the 5 steps. 1. Just notice. Be aware, get your head out of your phone. 2. Interpret it as an emergency. Don't wait for someone else. If your gut tells you something's wrong, it probably is. 3. Assume you are the only one who can help. You have to tell yourself, if I don't do something, nobody will. 4. Know how to help. You don't have to be a superhero. You can help directly, or you can create a detour just by calling 911. And 5. Act. And when you do, be specific. Don't just yell, somebody help. Point at someone. You, in the blue coat, call 911 right now. That directness snaps people out of it.
And hey, this works the other way around too. If you're the one who needs help, you can break the bystander effect yourself. Don't just shout a general help. Instead, pick one person out of the crowd, make eye contact, and say directly, you in the red shirt, I need your help. Just like that, you've turned a random bystander into your designated helper.
So when you boil it all down, the most important thing to remember is this. The bystander effect feels like this huge, powerful, invisible force, but it has a major weakness. It starts to lose all its power the moment you become aware that it exists. Seriously, just knowing about these psychological traps is the first and most critical step to making sure you don't fall into them. So, listening to all this, it's not just some interesting psychology lesson, right? It's actually a form of preparation. It's getting you ready for that moment when you might be called on to act. Because now that you know how all this works, you're not just an unaware bystander anymore. You're a potential upstander. So the real question is, what will you do?